We Need to Talk strikes fear into the hearts of most.
But we're breaking down that scary declaration on the Talking Couple podcast. I'm Deshaun.
And I'm Laurie. We're married.
Both from the South, but made the cross-country move to LA.
And are busy pursuing our careers. Even with the demands of life, we aim to put our marriage first. Every other week, we share personal experiences from our own relationship to help other couples spot red flags, get fresh insight,
and ultimately strengthen their partnerships. We get real, raw, and sometimes a little uncomfortable to give you the tools to change your life. Hello, world, and welcome to the Talking Couple podcast, episode number 102.
Whether you're in a relationship or you're looking for one, this is the show for you. We aren't afraid to tackle tough topics head on and share personal stories that inspire individual growth and a relationship revolution.
Yeah. On today's episode, we're going to talk about stress, anxiety, and because, well, there's no shortage of that right now.
That's right. But before we get vulnerable and talk about worry and fear, can we just talk about the fact that we literally had to make a schedule this week just to remember when to take a shower?
Yeah.
That's the state we're in.
That was really bad because, you go like a couple of days. It's like, oh, well, I'm on day 3. And it's like, oh, man, it's getting kind of bad. And then
it's time.
Day 4, then you're like, I really need to wash. And next thing you know, it's like you just that same cycle. It's like we really need to take time to like put it together. I'm like, hey, shower, this, that.
Yeah, and we did other things besides just plotting out our personal hygiene, but that was very helpful. Yeah. Definitely was. So tip of the day. So why don't we dive into this? I don't know if I'd call it difficult topic, but it's definitely a little bit more serious. Stress and anxiety is a very real thing that a lot of people struggle with on a regular basis when there's not a pandemic going on. But then you factor in the fear of, this coronavirus and, your loved ones and, maybe your kids are now at home. You're worried about your job. You're working from home. There's a total loss of control.
Yes, definitely.
And that is really hard for anybody to deal with. So important to talk about, and not just, when this type of thing is going on, but, stress and anxiety can really put a strain on a relationship. So that's something we really wanted to talk about because I've definitely struggled with it from time to time. Thankfully, it's not something that I have to struggle with, daily. Yeah. But definitely have, struggled with that over the years and even really more recently in like the last year or so. So try and like deal with that. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting time that we're in.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's hard. It's hard. Like, you wake up one day and you can't do the things that you want to do. You can't go to, like the places you want to go to, and you're stuck. And so it rocks your world because you're not in the space that you used to be in.
Yeah, routine is disrupted. Total feeling of loss of control, isolation, all those things, and I even heard, somebody at work talk about the word decision fatigue. And that was something that even like popped out at me and resonated because we're having to make these like crucial decisions. Like, should I go to the grocery today? Do I wear a mask or not wear a mask? Am I safe here? What can I do to keep my kids entertained for 8 hours? How do I support my partner? It's just these constant adapting, adjusting, and just decision fatigue. And I think that's why, like, for the first several weeks of this whole work from home quarantine, just exhausted at the end of the day. Definitely. Totally exhausted. So one of the things that has caused some pretty high stress and anxiety for us as a couple is right before this whole thing started, we were planning to launch a networking group. Business networking, group. A meetup group that would, meet in LA.
Mm-hmm. The organizers, and like we've got all the places, the locations, and like we're building the group and having a lot of members join and sending messages out, and
we were having a
A
launch
week?
event at the end of March.
A week before our event launches, and surprise, everybody's in lockdown.
Yeah,
And
restaurants
so,
are closed for
yeah.
business, and so
So,
that created like a lot of uncertainty
yeah,
that I
it's like,
think we weren't sure. Like, now what do we do?
yeah, because it's like, well, we gotta get links, we gotta create Zoom rooms, and tell everybody, hey, we're still doing it. It's not canceled, but the locations change, which is your office, your home, your bed,
Yeah.
your
So thankfully
phone.
we have that, and it's actually worked out just fine.
Yeah,
But that definitely did create like a heightened level of, oh no, we were just getting momentum with this group, and this was an exciting thing we'd been planning for months and months, and
hmm
just so typical lesson of life. Just when you think you've got everything figured out and life's
yeah.
going your way, and
It's
then
all good,
it
and then
throws
all of
you
a
a
sudden,
curveball.
for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
it bites, but
I think as far as like if you're in a relationship and you're going through this, like having patience with one another, which I will be the first to say we've done a lot more yelling at one another and arguing and having less patience with one another over the last couple of weeks, just because we're literally right on top of each other 24/7.
yeah,
But I think we've also done a pretty good job of listening when the other person is, we've each sort of hit a wall at different times during this, and
yeah,
I'll open up and share kind of when I hit a wall, I guess you should say, a wall of tears. No, but a couple of weeks into being, working from home, and I don't know, everything just sort of hit. I was feeling totally overwhelmed with work and the situation, and I don't like to show my emotion. I
yeah.
don't like to be vulnerable. And so I went and took a walk, which you knew about that I was going to go do that, but I literally could not hardly get out the door before I was just bawling. And I mean, I walked for about 45 minutes and bawled the whole time. Thankfully, there weren't a whole lot of people out. So I could keep myself together long enough to pass somebody and then start boo-hooing again. But even though I hated it, it was so therapeutic. And when I was done, I felt so much better. But like, kind of kept that a secret. I didn't want to like be like, well, I just went for a walk and I was bawling the whole time. Because that's just like makes me uncomfortable to be that vulnerable. But it definitely felt good. And then you kind of like,
No, I didn't have like a.
you didn't bawl on a walk, but you kind of had a moment where
Yeah, there's been like a couple of times where it's just like everything come together, and well, not coming together. It's just you have to like revamp your entire plan because you can't go anywhere, and so it gets frustrating, and it's like, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And
feeling kind of stuck.
yeah, just stuck. Just like I just need time to figure out which direction am I going to move in.
Yeah.
Versus just like, oh, everything's good to go. Just continue on moving.
Yeah, I think where you're feeling
So,
stuck is like with your business and, networking and growing your business. And it's still possible to do, but it's just
yeah, it's
been more
different.
difficult.
Yeah, it's different because, it's like you start from a cold market and then you go to like an Arctic market because you just like you can see people, you get their energy, and then like you're online, and then it's like everybody and their moms bombarding them with stuff, and then you're like, hey, I'm gonna throw my stuff out there, and it's so much.
Yeah.
And then we talked, and we was like, okay, let's just back up, punt, fourth quarter kind of deal, and let's plug away. So I think communication has been really good for
Key.
sure.
I mean, what we've ended up doing, because we can't go anywhere, is when we have those moments of needing a break, needing a mental break, we just take a little walk around our complex, and we talk and we walk and
Walk and talk and talk and walk and
work it
do
out.
little jumper jacks and have fun like we're like 12, just to feel like we're still
Lighten the mood a little bit.
yeah. So for sure.
Yeah. And then when all this passes, life will eventually go back to normal. And I think
Whatever that may be.
stress and anxiety is always going to be something that's there. And, worry, fear. I think I'm, like I've mentioned before, a recovering perfectionist. And so there's always that stress, I think, somewhere around there, trying to make sure, everything's in control and planned out. And it's been interesting because, like, in the last year or so, maybe last 2 years, I think, like, anxiety, those feelings of anxiety creeping up have affected me more than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has been around like job related. And, you saw, for a while, like almost every Sunday night before the new work week would start, I would just have these like anxiety, like attacks. I don't even know if attack is the right word, but definitely like this sense of like dread, doom, impending like hopelessness.
Yeah, well, you just didn't know, or you knew, but you're just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's like, do what? It's like, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. And it's just like, it's just you went in like a really good space.
Yeah.
And those are things that you can't keep inside. You just gotta talk about and just get them out there and say, hey, look, this is where I'm at right now, and it sucks. And I know you may not have the answers, but I need to get it out and just let it go and say, hey, blah blah blah.
Yeah, because I definitely the more I would think about it and the more I would internalize it, it would just grow and grow and grow. So getting it out definitely helped. It was still hard, and even talking about it, it was like almost every single weekend on Sunday night, same conversation, same feeling, same thing. And it wasn't like the situation changed overnight.
No, it took some time.
It took some time, yeah.
Once you realize, like, hey, I need to make that change, and sometimes it took that time. It took a drastic change for it to
kind of
really
better resolve itself. But
for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, just even with you trying to build a business and sort of feeling that pressure and that weight to like carry us financially as you're building this new great thing. That's also created anxiety in our relationship, and that's something that we've definitely had to talk about, because there could definitely be very easily an opportunity for resentment to build in, and anger, and insecurity, and all those things. And not to say that those haven't creeped in from time to time, but typically, like, when I'm like irritated and frustrated, and it usually kind of resorts back to one of those things, and we're able to kind of talk about it.
You fight it front. You fight it up front, and you take it on, and nobody gets mad. It's not about anger. It's not about ego. It's just a matter of like, hey, this is our life, and this is what's going on, and we need to handle this.
Yeah, and support each other.
Yeah, it's all about support and constant communication between the two, for sure.
Yeah, even when sometimes you don't want to talk about it. So I guess if there was a little tip or tidbit that we could share of something that works for us, is the walk and talk.
Yeah.
So the walk and talk, because you think about it, you're not looking at your phone, you're not in your same scenario, your same surroundings. You actually get out somewhere. It's the two of you. You're not in a defensive posture, because you're out taking a walk. And it clears your mind a little bit. And
then it's just like you're able to open up without having an agenda of like, oh, what am I going to get out of this, or whatever the case may be. And it lets everything out, and it's not about fixing the problem. It's just like, hey, this is where it's at. We can let it sit and marinate. I'm gonna leave it right here by this phone pole. Let's go. So.
And another great place to do that, once things return to normal and we're able to use it again. But if you we have a hot tub outside our
Mm.
complex, or in our complex right outside our door, and we've done some of our best brainstorming
Oh yeah.
and like goal setting and life planning. Maybe not so much for conflict resolution, but
But,
definitely
yeah.
for those things, the hot tub is the best place for that.
And I'm a little upset that we can't go in
We
there.
can't use it right now, but we'll get back to that. We will get back to that. So we've kind of talked about how tough things like that can be, but there's also like a little bit of a silver lining, don't you think,
Yeah.
in this current environment that we're in?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But everyone, like, we're all vulnerable at this point, because we have like common ground now. Like, we all are pretty much quarantined in a sense that we can't go anywhere, we can't socialize physically, we can have Zoom calls, we can call people, but it's just a matter of just like checking on one another, just to make sure, like, hey, are you safe? Hey, are you okay? Like,
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things we were talking about on one of our walk and talks. That was
Mhm.
last night, I guess. We've noticed that now that we all, as society, have this common ground, that we're more comfortable, one, just when we ask somebody how they're doing, like we genuinely are asking, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? Rather than the, hey, how's it going?
oh, what's up, Tony?
I'm fine, And so not only are we asking people genuinely, how are you doing? People are vulnerable.
Yeah, and saying like, oh well, I'm actually feeling this way, or I'm feeling
Kind of
that
tough,
way.
or it's like we're giving ourselves permission to genuinely open up and be vulnerable with one another. And so then we were talking, how do we preserve that, or hopefully bottle up a little bit of that and take it with us when we get back to normal.
Or whatever that normal may be.
Yeah.
Being able to get into interaction. So.
Yeah, because I mean, the last thing that we want to ever pretend to be is perfect. That whole fake Instagram life, type of scenario. That's not really the type of couple that we are at all. And that's where a lot of that feeling of isolation, and I truly believe a lot of depression and anxiety comes from that feeling of like needing to be perfect, and we all feel so isolated from one another because no one is willing to be vulnerable and real. And that's one thing we definitely want to be on the show, is vulnerable and real. And so it's been nice and refreshing in this little silver lining of this all of this negative thing that's going around, is that people are actually showing up for one another even when they can't be present physically. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, can we continue that? Can we start this momentum in society, in our culture?
I think so.
That would be pretty cool.
I think so.
Yeah. So why don't we close with a question from a listener?
Okay.
As a reminder, you can always send those to us because we love to hear from you at feedback@thetalkingcouple.com.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the question we got
So,
today?
why do I seem to attract the same type of guy or gal that ends up in the same toxic situation?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of rough. And so, like, for me, I did a lot of, like, self-work on myself, just understanding, like, the things that I wanted, who I wanted to be with, what type of person that I wanted to be, like I had a lot of, like, I was just in a bad space mentally, and so once you get to a point to where nothing's really going your way, or, just like relationships and just in general, money, life, like why is all the bad things happening to me is, well, it's just, you were putting it out there.
Yeah.
And once I got to a point to where like I'm comfortable, I'm okay, I feel good, and that's when essentially you came along.
Yeah.
And like things have been great.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to be said for kind of starting with yourself first and like figuring out, one, how can you make yourself happy first before you try to find that in somebody else. You know, and a lot of times we end up with people that we're used to from the way we grew up. I mean, if we saw something modeled in our life, we end up kind of with that in our own life, even though that's something that we don't want. So, you know, but until you start thinking about those things and like exploring those and, you know, delving deeper into that, you're gonna kind of end up attracting the same type of person. And, you know, I've even if it's not somebody that's bad for you, I've even seen this with, you know, friends that I've known in the past where, you know, they would jump from one relationship to another, to another, to another with like no break in between. And
Breakdown.
That's even, you know, a symptom of kind of not being happy with who you are. I mean, you're just not, you don't want to be alone, you know, and you don't want to have that break between relationships, because then if you're alone, you have to think about things and, you know, what does that say about you? And, you know, your insecurities if you're not with somebody. And so even if they end up in a great relationship, like, have they really done the work on themselves, or even are they in a good place to where they're happy whether they're with that person or not? And are they putting too much pressure and weight on that other person to make them happy?
Yeah, it could be a combination of a lot, but
yeah,
I think you gotta figure out what you want, who you are, and then you
make that happen for yourself.
Take those steps and go on to the next thing.
Yeah, and actually this is something that we feel is so crucial to the start of a successful relationship that it's going to be the topic of our very next episode. So on the next episode, you're going to hear about the secrets around setting yourself up for success in a relationship. And, you know, as we've kind of touched on, it really has less to do with finding Mr. or Mrs. Right and more to do with finding your true self. So more to come on that.
Yes.
And this has been a good episode.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. Can't wait for the next one to come out.
Can't either. All right.
So, well, like, comment, subscribe, share, and follow. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Talking Couple podcast.
We have a favor to ask. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to The Talking Couple. We'd love to hear from you.
You can also find us on social media. We are The Talking Couple on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.